Alright, what is up guys, it is Storm back here with another video, and in this one I am bringing you part 10 to the new Dawn of Naruto slash Boruto story. But before we begin, if you like the content that you see, then be sure to drop a sub, like, and comment. I mean, they're all free. If you want some of my channel merch, the link to that will be down in the description below. I think it's pretty dope, so if you want some, go cop some. If you like horror or ReZero, go check out my other channels, links will be down in the description below. And if you want to see more of me, go follow me on Twitter and Instagram. Links will be down in the description as well. But without further ado, why don't we just dive right on in. Boruto yawned. Watch duty was boring. Blinking away his tiredness, he glanced at the clock. His shift wasn't over until 4. Boruto sighed. AG apparently had thought he had proved himself somehow during the brief clash with his friends. Therefore, as his reward, he was being given extra freedoms, which mostly consisted of extra duties. Watch duty during ungodly hours of the morning, swabbing the deck, running into town to buy food, most of which consisted of booze, all under the watchful eye of Hikari. They were moored just off the shore of the largest island in the land of water. It was home to the majority of the country's citizens, as well as the seat of power for the Water Lord and his government. The exact location of the hidden mist village was unknown, but was rumored to be on the far east side of the island, which was constantly blanketed in the thick mist all year round. All Boruto knew for sure was that at some point in the next 1 to 3 days, a shipment of very valuable chakra metal was to be shipped to the hidden mist, and they were supposed to liberate the men delivering the metal of their cargo. Boruto yawned. He couldn't stay awake a minute longer if he was forced to stare out over the misty waves for a ship they didn't even know was to be arriving tonight. Boruto stood and stretched, sighing in relief as the joints in his back popped. Taking a quick look around the bridge of the ship and noticing that he was alone, Boruto allowed his chakra to flood into his eyes. He felt the veins writhing in his temples, bulging with blood in the presence of so much chakra. The disorienting sensation of seeing everywhere at once assaulted Boruto's senses. After a few moments, the sensation passed. Looking at his feet, Boruto saw through the floorboards. If he focused, he could see the sleeping forms of men and women several decks below him. Their hammocks rocked with the sway of the ship, but all were accounted for. Even AG passed out with a bottle of rum in his hands. Satisfied that he was safe for the moment, Boruto resumed his seat before the ship's wheel and withdrew the scroll from the seal on his forearm. As he did, he caught his reflection in the glass that separated him from the harsh cold of the land of water, and the spray of the sea. His eyes were so very alien, especially on him. The Byakugan had always been his mom's or sister's eyes, never his. Now they were. Boruto smirked and opened the scroll. The scroll had advanced to the next lesson, somehow judging the amount of work he had done to mold Yang chakra to be sufficient, even though Boruto couldn't make any. The elemental disturbance seal is quite possibly one of the most useful seals you will learn, Boruto read in the Uzukage's voice. It is one of the very few seals which can be used with little prior preparation, making it ideal for combat. The function of the seal is thus, to disturb the flow of an opponent's chakra, specifically making it difficult, or impossible for them to practice nature transformations. In the war with the land of water, this technique was widely feared. The lava and boil released bloodlines, common to the hidden mist, were easily defeated once their control of the basic 5 elements were no longer under their control. The one weakness of the seal is that the user must have prolonged direct contact with the skin of their target. Be careful when applying to ninja who excel at taijutsu. The writing on the scroll blurred, changing to a series of diagrams and instructional passages. Boruto groaned when he saw the seal required nearly 15 hand seals to use. No one in their right mind would let him touch them for a prolonged period of time after he weaved 15 hand seals while he ran at them. The number of hand seals was apparently necessary too. Each set of 3 seals corresponds to one of the elements: fire, earth, water, wind, and lightning. In total, all 15 seals must be performed to cover every possible chakra nature. Thus, this seal was especially powerful in the hands of sensors, who could tell a person's chakra natures with a mere glance. Knowing which natures needed to be disturbed, a sensor could cut down the required amount of seals to only those needed. Boruto sighed and began to go through the motions of weaving hand seals and memorizing their meaning and order. He was glad he decided to keep his Byakugan activated. He didn't even need to look up to make sure no ship docked to the port they were moored in. And dog, horse, tiger, Boruto muttered under his breath as he weaved the seals, allowing chakra to travel to its fingertips. He gasped as his thumb caught fire, a brilliant azure flame of chakra. He could clearly see the lines of his chakra pathway system flaring to life, from his thumb to his hand, up to his forearm. Boruto smiled. He truly was glad he had awakened the Byakugan like his sister. Alright, what's next? Boruto mumbled, fumbling with the scroll to see the next series of hand seals. Ox, bird. Boruto nearly jumped from his chair as he heard footsteps in the hallway. His concentration broken, the seal dissipated. Fumbling with the scroll, he managed to just re-roll and reseal it when the door to the ship's bridge opened. His heart hammered in his chest as Hikari entered the bridge, eyeing it wearily as if there were enemies hiding in the shadows at 4 in the morning already. Shift change. Boruto had lost track of time. "What are you doing?" Hikari demanded of him, though not impolitely. "What?" Boruto managed to squeak out. His master was wide awake, her eyes sharp as she focused on his face. She didn't look tired at all. Boruto thought she was secretly some sort of machine. That or she had pure, liquefied military discipline running through her veins instead of blood. Both were equally possible in his opinion. "Your eyes," Hikari said, her own eyes dancing across his temples. Boruto realized he hadn't deactivated his Byakugan. He said with a nervous chuckle. "For the watch. Just to make sure they didn't sneak by," he said lamely. Hikari seemed to look him up and down, judging him. "A good idea," she said after a few moments. No sooner did she say the words did a ship part the mist and enter the bay from the sea. Hikari shoved him against the glass without a word. "What do you see?" she hissed. Boruto felt a particularly large vein in his right temple bulge as his Byakugan's visual acuity increased. He could just make out the shapes of men on the deck of the ship. As the vessel drew closer, metal glinted on the men's forehead in the moonlight. Boruto could just, ever so barely, make out the indistinct markings of the hidden cloud ninja on the deck, maybe 4 or 5 of them, Boruto informed Hikari. "That's them," she said. "I'll wake the men. Prepare for battle." Boruto swallowed nervously. They didn't say they were stealing from both the hidden mist and hidden cloud, nor did they inform him they would be fighting ninja, just some sailors who were transporting the metal. He left the confines of the ship's bridge and the hallway was already filling up with grim-faced crimson-tide mercenaries. They wore their standard-issue fatigues, with their trademark crimson-colored headbands. Together, the company made their way onto the deck. They crouched low, hiding behind the railing. A few men leapt into the sails and rigging or held onto the masts. The hidden cloud ship bobbed in the water as it passed them slowly. By some unspoken agreement, the men in the sails and rigging leapt from their perches and crashed onto the deck of the enemy ship. Calls of alarm were sounded in an instant as the first mercenaries attacked the hidden cloud ninja. The men hiding behind the railing threw grappling hooks that caught on the ship's rigging and allowed them to swing over. Boruto jumped from the railing. Pushing Chakra to his feet, he cleared the distance and slid to a stop, nearly tumbling into the hold. Below, he could see crates with row upon row of metal ingots. Boruto flinched backward as a shuriken sailed from somewhere in the hold and nearly blinded him. Turning and wading into the chaos, Boruto drew a kunai. A large, burly sailor appeared from a nearby doorway. His face was slack with sleep, but upon seeing Boruto, his eyes widened in rage as he realized what was happening. Bellowing, the sailor drew a cutlass and charged, his sword held above his head. Boruto easily sidestepped the telegraphed attack and cut the man for trying to kill him, slashing a deep gash between the sailor's shoulder blades. The man howled in pain and fury, rounding on him with rage in his eyes. Boruto shrunk back, unable to quench the fear of fighting another man. The sailor went flying. Boruto watched as his body sailed through the air and came to a sudden stop as it collided with the mast of the ship in a sickening crunch. He looked over and saw Takeo scowling at him, his scratched headband glinting in the moonlight. The rogue gave him a quick nod and rushed off to find another opponent. Boruto felt the hair of his neck stand on end. He ducked, and a kick of arcing electricity sailed over his head. Boruto turned to face the man, a hidden cloud ninja. The man didn't wear any boots or shoes, instead walking barefoot, lightning covering the soles of his feet, crackling and hissing. Boruto hurled his kunai at him, and the ninja easily dodged and sprinted forward. Evading a kick, Boruto reached up with 2 fingers and struck the man in the back of the knee. As the kick ended, the man staggered, unable to stand upright. Boruto struck him 3 more times with open palm fists. The hidden Cloud Ninja's eyes widened as he realized that Boruto's taijutsu was no ordinary taijutsu. The gentle fist touch was light as a feather, but cut as deep as any kunai. Boruto's opponent reached for a fistful of shuriken. Boruto leaned forward, striking the man's arms. He dropped to the deck and floundered like a fish out of water. For good measure, Boruto struck him several more times. The man slipped into blissful unconsciousness. Boruto surveyed the small, chaotic deck. There were Crimson Tide mercenaries flooding the ship, fighting hidden Cloud Ninja and sailors alike. Boruto saw no more enemies above deck, so he moved below. It was cramped and dark, with crates, spare coils of rope, and hammocks hanging from every surface. Making sure to avoid tripping on the coils of rope, Boruto moved further below deck. A few lonely candles flickered inside metal and glass lanterns, providing the only light. Somewhere to Boruto's left, down a corridor, a man howled in pain. After a moment, he was silenced. Boruto swallowed his fear and steered his nerves. He had his chance to go home, and he chose not to. This was his life for the next 3 years. He needed to get used to it. Moving further below deck, Boruto stumbled in the darkness. Tripping over a step in the stairs, he clumsily grabbed the nearest thing to him, a length of white fabric hanging nearby. The white fabric bellowed a battle cry and leapt at Boruto, pinning him to the ground. The man's hands found their way to his thin neck and squeezed. Boruto raised his own hands and tore at the chokehold, trying desperately to get air into his lungs on instinct. His rational mind kicked in, and Boruto lowered his hands and struck the man in the chest with a gentle fist several times. He recoiled, coughing violently. In the twilight of the ship's small corridor, Boruto could see blood running down the man's chin in rivulets. Boruto kicked the man in the head as hard as he could. The sailor collapsed to the ground with labored, gurgling breathing, not willing to risk being ambushed again. Boruto allowed his chakra to sear through his eyes. The darkness faded as his Byakugan manifested, parting to give way to the familiar, washed-out blues Boruto had come to associate with the eyes of the Hyuga. With the Byakugan, he could easily see the sailor with the cutlass hiding in the closet a few feet from him. Taking a deep breath, he stilled and weaved a series of hand seals. He exhaled, and silently sent a lance of pressurized water through the wood that struck the man in the face. The sailor collapsed instantly, his body dropping like a marionette that had its strings cut. Smirking, Boruto turned his sight downwards. Below him was a mass of flaming chakra, men and women all standing around one stop in the cargo hold. Since Boruto hadn't seen Crimson Tide mercenaries follow him below deck, he could only assume they were guards that had retreated below deck to protect the chakra metal that they were supposed to steal. He stilled as his Byakugan saw a figure descend down the stairs he had come from. Hiding in the shadows, he waited. From the silhouette of the person, Boruto could tell it was a woman. She crept along the corridor in perfect silence, stopping when she encountered one of the sailors Boruto had incapacitated. Each time she flicked her arm at them. Moments later, the ball of fire in their bellies dwindled and was extinguished. Boruto swallowed nervously as the woman who had killed the sailors crept closer to him. She was no more than a few feet away in the darkness when she spoke. "Good job with the sailors," Hikari whispered. Boruto sighed in relief. He had heard stories of ninja killing their own allies, either to put them out of their misery or, and more commonly, to prevent their secrets from being extracted from them. He didn't know anything about the hidden cloud, but he wasn't about to risk meeting one of them again. "What do you see?" Hikari asked. "How can you even see my eyes? There's barely any light down here," Boruto whispered. Her attention for detail was disturbing. The only light this far below deck was the occasional lantern of the twilight rays of the sun, filtering in between the boards and timbers of the ship's hull. "Soldier pills," Hikari answered curtly. "What do you see?" "There's a group of people below us, in the cargo hold. They're gathered around a spot in the center of the hold," Boruto informed her. 10 people in all," he added, quickly counting them. "Good. That should be all of them according to the intel we received," Hikari said. "Here, eat this," she commanded, handing him a small, round pill. Boruto hesitated. "What is it?" Hikari flashed him an annoyed, impatient look. "An antidote. Eat it," she answered. Boruto quickly swallowed the pill, not needing to be told what it was for. Hikari reached in one of the pouches on her belt and withdrew a fistful of small spheres. "If any of them get up, inform me immediately," she ordered him. Boruto nodded swiftly. Hikari inched along the corridor, her back to the wall. When she came to the stairway that descended into the cargo hold, she peeked down the stairs. Seeing that there was no door, she hurled the spheres into the hold. In an instant, a thick, foul-smelling smoke filled the air. Boruto held his breath, but was forced to cough as the gas irritated the nose and throat, almost by design. Focusing below deck, he could see that 10 guards falling to the floor. The fire in them was not extinguished, so Boruto could only assume Hikari had used some form of sleeping gas. "All clear," Boruto said. Hikari nodded and quickly descended into the hold. Boruto followed her, wincing as she whistled loudly. The latticed gate of the deck high above them creaked open, and several men dropped down, including Eiji. Boruto blinked at the sudden burst of light. Eiji looked around at the unconscious guards and cackled. He stalked over to one of the several large wooden crates in the center of the hold. Bodily throwing a man from where he slumbered, he tore off the lid of one of the crates. Standing on his toes, Boruto could see the crate was filled with dull gray-colored ingots of metal. Eiji held one up and channeled chakra into it. The ingot reacted by glowing blue. "This is what we came for, boys," he boomed. "Load 'em up." Boruto watched as thick rope nets and rigging were thrown into the hold. Burly mercenaries hefted the crates into the nets, which were then pulled above deck and presumably moved to their ship. Eiji turned to face Hikari, and at the same time Boruto. He smiled at the two. "Howdy do, Lieutenant?" Eiji questioned. He showed a reluctance to take life, but fought well considering the circumstances. The Hyuga's taijutsu and eyes make him a powerful and unpredictable opponent. You would have found the face the hidden cloud ninja made when he realized his chakra points were being sealed comical, I think, Hikari said, breaking down Boruto's performance during the theft. Boruto didn't even know she was watching him. Eiji barked in laughter as Hikari finished briefing him. "Not bad, kid. We'll make a merc out of you yet," he said, hitching a ride on the last crate as it was sent skyward. "Another successful mission, boys. Drinks on me." Boruto was in awe. The Hidden Leaf was a bastion of wealth and technology, but the level of opulence displayed in the mission he, Hikari, and Eiji were being led through was something entirely different. The floors were wooden, made from a rich, dark red wood. The walls had ornate wooden trim running along the wall and ceiling. There were vases that Boruto could tell were antiques and clearly worth more than people's houses. Occasionally there would be a mural painted on the ceiling. The manservant opened a set of tall doors that led into a large room with a long dining table. A man sat at the far end of the table, at the head. Flanking him were two guards, hulking, burly men that looked more like apes than men. Bodyguards, Boruto noted. The man sitting in the chair, whom Boruto could only assume was their client, was horribly and disgustingly fat. His chin had somehow multiplied by 4, and the chair struggled to contain the man's sheer girth. Fat pooled and bulged between the armrest and the seat, making it appear as if the chair was much too small to seat him. Boruto thought it probably was, but he wasn't about to say anything. "Mr. Fukui," Eiji said, inclining his head in greetings. The fat man looked up, his chin wobbling. "Ah, my friends from the Crimson Tide. I trust my order was fulfilled." Eiji held up a metal ingot, allowing it to grow a bright blue color denoting that it was chakra metal. "Excellent," the man, Mr. Fukui, Boruto amended, said. Mr. Fukui nodded to one of his hulking bodyguards, who left the room. He returned moments later, hosting 4 large briefcases over his shoulder. "Your payment is promised. All 500,000 Ryo, Mr. Fukui said. Eiji relieved the bodyguard of the money and opened each, quickly verifying the contents. Seeing that everything was in order, he bowed to Mr. Fukui. "A pleasure doing business with you again, sir," he said. He tossed a spare ingot to the bodyguard, who stared at it dumbly as it bounced off his skull and fell to the ground. Boruto had to bite his tongue in order to not giggle. The 3 of them swept out of the mansion as quickly as they had arrived. It was only a short run back to where they were docked at a nearby cove. As Boruto scampered over the railing and fell to the deck, Eiji hoisted him to his feet and shoved a fistful of Ryo in his face. "You're cut, kid. Welcome to the crew," he said with a wide smile. Boruto's eyes widened as he began to count. His cut. It was more money than he had ever had in his entire life. Ever seen, in fact. 200 notes of 100 Ryo. 20,000 in all. Eiji smirked at his reaction. "Keep it up, kid. You'll be rich by the time you're done with us," he said, laughing. Boruto nodded. 3 years with a bunch of cutthroat thugs and mercenaries, where he got to learn new techniques and earn a bunch of money doing it, that he could do. Annoying his father was just an extra bonus.